right, welcome everyone to the Kubeskills community. How's everybody doing today? If you're just joining, go ahead and give us a big hello in the chat and tell us where you're tuning in from. All right, so today we got a really exciting show, especially later in the show when we announce the winner of the KCNA course voucher, or exam voucher, I should say, and the course voucher. So very exciting stuff. This just to give you some quick stats on the on where we're at regarding the giveaway. So wow, 743 contestants. That's pretty cool, and a total of 6,265 entries. So every person was allowed multiple entries, of course, and so that's really cool. So we got a good turnout there. So looking forward to seeing who the winner is. So again, welcome everyone to the Kubeskills community, coming at you live here on YouTube on December 21st. What is Kubeskills? Well, Kubeskills is a community for everyone, truly everyone, where you can join and collaborate with hundreds of other friends. Everything's better with friends, right? And learn all these complexities of containers and Kubernetes. And we do focus on Kubernetes exclusively. So it's a really close-knit, tight group of friends here. Today, we're joined by Andrew Brown. Hello, Andrew Brown. He is the CEO of ExamPro. Go to exampro.co. Let me put that up on the big screen here. A lot of comments coming in.
There we go.
Cool. Exampro.co. Let's see. Let's make that a little bit cooler. Oh, there we go. I like that one. ExamPro, training provider, providing fast and easy ways to study for certification exams, so study for your AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, Azure Administrator exam, Google Cloud Associate Cloud Engineer, whatever you're studying. Obviously, we're here for the KCNA exam specifically, and many, many more courses. Check out exampro.co. Also, check out the cheat sheets. I particularly like that, Andrew. The cheat sheets, flashcards, exam simulator is fire. Check that out. Also, all those in combination are really unique about your platform, which I appreciate, and obviously helps you for preparing for exam day, which is what we're all after, right? So check out also Andrew Brown on Dev2. I give a shout out to Dev2. So dev.2/Andrew Brown. Check out Andrew Brown on there, where he's a top moderator, top author, and has a lot of good stuff over there to contribute to Dev2. Love that platform. So next, check out, Andrew's got a lot of things going on here. Let's check out the free code camp. He's got a lot of interesting articles over there and courses. Free code camp, where obviously everything is free, which is awesome. I'm actually a monthly contributor to free code camp, so I donate and appreciate their work over there. And check out Andrew on GitHub. Omen King. He'll have to tell us about that later. And check out what he's working on GitHub. And what I found interesting was he is Andrew Brown on Twitter, which is a pretty amazing handle to have. Pretty exclusive. Andrew Brown, just Andrew Brown on Twitter, where he chronicles his mission to get shredded by reInvent 2023. We're all tuning in to find out. He's a lover of Star Trek and coconut water, everyone. Mr. Andrew Brown, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Chad, I feel like you know way more about me than I know about you. That's either, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but
I did my research. We have to know. We have to know here on the show. So yeah, welcome. Good to have you here. Obviously, today we're tuning in to talk about the KCNA exam and how we can go about doing our best and passing that exam. So let me pull it up on a screen here, exampro.co/KCNA. is the course that you've made here. So, um, you know, tell us a little bit about who the KCNA is made for. Someone maybe new to cloud native or Kubernetes, someone who's a senior cloud engineer, solutions architect, filling the gaps. Am I hitting the nail on the head there? Tell us who's this KCNA exam for?
Sure. Yeah. So the KCNA is an interesting exam because I've done fundamental certifications across the board: AWS, Azure, GCP, and cloud native was something that I really wanted to jump into because we wanted to go and implement Kubernetes for our own infrastructure ourselves. And it made sense to me we should start with the KCNA, and that would probably give us fundamental knowledge, like all the other ones, a large landscape of knowledge in the cloud native space. And it does do that. So it does serve as a fundamental certification. What was different than any other fundamental certification in the cloud space was that it actually required you to know things by doing things. And
Mm.
so, some exams, other ones are doing a tiny bit better job, but in their requirements, they're like, you don't have to be able to do anything in AWS. You just have to know all the service names and the offerings and stuff like that. Like, you can look at the exam guide today and they'll say that. Now, I wouldn't say the KCNA says you have to use Kubernetes, but they're giving you all these Kubernetes commands and things like that in the exam, right? So you really do need to work with Kubernetes, but to the degree of it is not to the extreme. But I would say it's one step harder than the other ones. But who is it for? Well, I think that the KCNA is for folks that already have some cloud knowledge or technical background because of that extra little bar there. But it's a great introduction into being able to work with Kubernetes to get your feet wet.
Yeah, I did notice that, which was really interesting, being that it's in kind of an entry level exam, right? I always kind of compare it to, the cloud practitioner, or I guess the Azure has the AZ, what is it, AZ 900,
Mm-hmm.
um, where it's I'm a technical person. No offense to the folks out there taking those exams, but it's for a lot of times it's for salespeople or people in marketing or people who are um, new to the exam. Um, you know, more of an entry. I guess lowers the bar in terms of there's a bigger gap between that exam and the AZ 400, for example, or the solutions architect associate. So I did notice that, which was really interesting. I wonder why they did it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't mind it. It is what it is. I don't feel that the exam is unfair or it's like hard in a like a weird or unfair way. But you do have to have more technical knowledge, and would it be nice if there was a split between like the KCNA and another one or something where it is? I don't know, but you see where the other two, the CK and the CKD are. So I think it's okay where the KCNA sits. But you're just going to have to come in with the KCNA with a bit more technical study, especially with Linux networking. I did not realize how weak my Linux networking was until I did the KCNA, but I felt I learned a lot, so I didn't mind it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see a lot of questions in the chat about the difference between KCNA and also those other, we call them the trifecta, the CKAD, CKA, and CKS. So you do a good job of outlining this in your course. But what are for the folks that are asking those questions and the folks listening? What's the difference there between those exams and in particular the KCNA and the other ones?
Sure. So one of the key differences, at least at the exam level, is that you're taking the KCNA, it's multiple choice, maybe multiple select. I can't remember if it's just multiple choice or select. And in the other ones, you actually are running in sandboxes. So I think it's using killer.sh or something, a similar experience to that. But the idea is that when you go for the CKAD or the CKA, you literally have to type in Kubernetes commands against a Kubernetes cluster and things like that. When we look at the next two levels up, CKA and CKD, and I have to talk broadly here because the information is not loaded in my head today. But the CKA, I remember it was like actually provisioning actual clusters, and that one's kind of interesting because I think that in practice, you probably are going to be using managed clusters quite often. So I'm trying to remember the command. It's kube ADM, or I don't remember that, but the idea is that
Yeah.
there is a sorry. Do you recall the command
Yeah,
line?
I happen to know a little bit about the CKA exam. I just
I hope
finished
so.
it. Yeah, no, yeah, I can shed some light on that. Yeah, so the CKA exam, I would I have a book out on passing the CKA exam. Just by the way, humble plug there, but anyways, yeah, so the CK exam presents you with 6 different clusters, which are kind of pre-built clusters. So I wouldn't say you'd be creating those clusters from scratch ever. However, like you said, like you mentioned, the cube ADM command can be used to, and you may be asked to join a node to an existing cluster, or troubleshoot a cluster where a node is down. And then, yeah, like you said, the kubeadm command is, kubeadm join, and that join command is both displayed along with a token when you first create the cluster, but also for the exam purposes, that could be generated, obviously after the fact, or you can, there's a special flag that you could print that join command with the token, and add that node in. So
Yeah, so administration stuff, and like what I recall was like Cube ADM stuff, or I would imagine maybe we're getting into more things like replica sets or those more exotic administrator features, unless that's in the developer. I'm not sure. What I was surprised not to see in the developer was like more deployment, maybe with like cloud native solutions like Argo. But again, I haven't sat those exams yet, so I don't know the composition of them. I guess that's more of a question for you, Chad. But I do know that like it was hard to figure out where the KCNA ends and the CKAD starts. I think that might be the more natural progression between the two courses, from what I remember last. And in a lot of times, like when I was doing my course, I'm like, am I doing too much? Is this more CKAD stuff? And I could not tell, but
yeah, so my take on that, and this can be disputed, but uh, my opinion is that the track that you should take, if you're asking me, my opinion is, you should, start off with the KCNA, of course, go to the CKAD, CKA, and then CKS. That's just a level of difficulty as I've experienced it. I've had another. I've talked to a couple other people where they said the CKA was actually easier than the CKAD, um, but anyway, I think that's the order of operations that I would take. And then people were asking in the chat. I'm trying to keep up with the chat. There's a lot of questions. I appreciate that. But there's a practice exam by, I think you just mentioned it, Killer Shell. And so if you go to killer.sh in your web browser, you could go through a practice exam. And by the way, if you purchase an exam, so if you purchase an exam with the intention of taking it, you get 2 of those practice ones for free. So don't buy it again. Go ahead and utilize those free practice exams with the actual exam. But if you're not taking the exam, you can also buy a practice exam for I think it's $20 or $30 US. So still not bad for the questions that you get, and the questions are worthy of a practice exam. They are actually harder than the real exam, so you get really good practice. And yeah, we love Cam over there at Killer Shell. He's doing great work over there. Killer Coda we've mentioned this before, where we can spin up a cluster in seconds and get to practicing those kubectl commands. So we always like to mention them. So yeah, let me just peruse the chat for 1 second just to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Yeah, just as a distinction, when we're talking about killer.sh, we're talking about practice labs. So, like, these are sandbox or virtual environments where you're working against a cluster. The KCNA, again, is just practice exam. So, it's multiple choice. I do have a free set that should be mostly up to date. So, you need that. You just sign up and go get that on my platform. It's not a big deal there. Um, again, I didn't find the KCNA too hard, but it was a bit more of a psych out when you were preparing for it because of those harder parts of learning. I know, like for the KCNA, I needed external help. Like maybe you don't need it because I wrote a course and there's better courses out there. But at the time, I had to go and reach out to community members and say like, okay, what's with all these runtimes? Because in the outline, the KCNA doesn't spell out exactly what you need to study like other certification providers. Now, I've noticed I don't know why it's been this way, but Azure was the first where they detailed everything in extreme detail of what you want to learn. Then AWS followed suit. Now GCP follows suits. The Kubernetes, the KCNA, like the CNCF, they don't seem to write their exam outlines the same way. They're very light. And so you have to kind of infer what it is. And so, like, I remember when I was going down runtimes, I'm like, which runtimes are going to show up? And I had to make a big list and I had to go through them. And then I found out that some were defunct or, they're around, but they're not really used or so that I think that's where kind of I hit hard parts in my study journey was not having confidence. But
Mm.
I think it's like if it's the most like the most popular ones, you don't have to worry about all those loose ends, but you can kind of get, you know, down the squirrely rabbit hole trying to figure out like, is this in scope? And that was kind of hard for me.
Yeah, speaking of, I did like how you in your course you highlighted the I think they're called built-in plugins. This is also like a
Yeah.
confusing terminology that you cleared up in the course, which I appreciate. So the difference between the internal plugins and the external plugins, and and you showed an example of Core DNS, right?
Yeah, it was core DNS. And I think the thing was like, I tried to relate it to another because there's another concept. Anyway, it's in my course, but it was one of those things where I couldn't get a definitive answer, and I was getting like mixed opinions by other folks. And I just said, well, what it looks like is what it is. And sometimes, as an instructor, you have to put your foot down and say, well, this is what it must be, and just say the caveat, like, I don't know, but like I can't get consensus. But it appears to be what it is, the built-in plugins or I'm trying to think like when you have a repository and they're actually like inline in the repository. Oh, sorry, I'm talking about in of tree and out of tree. So I
Oh
remember
yeah.
those two terms was not terms I did not come across very often. I only found it when I went to cloud native. So built-in functions, tree in, tree out. And so I had to say, well, I think that tree in is when they are in the repo for the most part. And, there's sometimes disagreements on those parts, but generally, you don't have to be perfect with that kind of stuff. You just have to generally be able to remember that stuff to carry you forward. And I think that's okay. So, if there's a bit of uncertainty, it's okay. Even for course instructors, for me, there is. So,
Yeah, I find it interesting that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which you have to remember for the exam, right? CNCF has a lot of terminology that is sometimes conflicting, sometimes complementary to, you know, you and I both have this in common, which we kind of come from the AWS world where they have their certain terminology, and then CNCF has their own. So did you notice that was a difficult thing to grasp? And
mhm.
yeah, like how was that for you?
Well, even some of the core components, I remember that there would be names and they meant something very particular in AWS or in the cloud, and they didn't mean the same thing, or they weren't clear. I'm trying to remember, like they say, like it's like ingress controller or service, or
Service, yeah.
those terms. I'm just like, isn't a service just a service? No, no. It means like it's not the service. It's like a networking routing component, right? Like it did not translate over to one-to-one there, and so you kind of have to break your brain for a second and
Yeah.
just start mapping these terms to mean other things. I probably have a slide where I did a comparison, and I probably said like, "Hey, these things don't line up in my head, so don't feel bad if they don't line up for you." So yeah, there are some components there, and they're at the fundamental level, right? So
Yeah, we were talking about this last week with Josh. We were talking to, you were there, and talking about learning, systems for learning Kubernetes. And what's kind of stumps people a lot when starting to learn Kubernetes is all this terminology, right? And you kind of have to get a grasp of that before you go into the even deeper complexities, right?
yeah, yeah, and I agree with that too. I was just looking at my slides. I one thing that I did that was totally unnecessary, but for me, it made it a lot easier was to create my own icon set.
Mm.
So I don't know if you noticed in my course, but all those icons I created because I did not like the hexagonal ones. And for
Yeah.
me, it was like a practice of seeing how CNCF projects work. So, the case or the CNCF, the idea is you're able to submit a project and get it owned or whatever. And I was talking about like, yeah, the CNCF is really open, and there's all these channels to which to get your stuff through, and there's a process. And I mean, I
Mhm.
didn't follow through with it all the way, but it was more one of those things of saying like, okay, how do I put into practice, that kind of component. And that's something I thought was really interesting was like the governance and organization that we don't get in other providers, and how certain standards get adopted, and how you can have influence on Kubernetes or the cloud native space was very interesting. But yeah, if anyone noticed, I made my own icon set and I want it to become official, but I got to push it a bit harder.
Yeah, I particularly like the namespace one. I will always remember now the slice of pie in namespace. It was brilliant. I also like how you um I think it was like a goldfish versus an elephant. You remember that one?
Yep,
So I can't so goldfish to represent kind of the
it was stateless, I think,
ephemeral.
versus stateful. So
Yeah.
like, stateless would be like a goldfish because they can't really remember stuff, right?
Yeah.
So and then stateful is like an elephant never forgets. So that's what we were talking about, I guess, like replica sets and stateful sets. And that concept is not unique to me. Like taking those kind of models and applying it, they're called mental models.
Yeah.
Taking something that you know to kind of anchor that information. My friend Hero, she does like cloud newbies, and she does that a lot in her book. I wish I
Mm.
did more of them. I'm just not that creative, but that is one of my favorite slides.
Yeah, I think like I said, we were talking about this last week, and I think that helps drive home a lot of the more complex concepts. And if you have this thing in your mind when you're learning something that kind of sets it in concrete, this kind of concrete thing, like a picture, like a yeah, something that just represents what you're learning. It's makes it a lot easier, especially as opposed to just text on a screen, right? So I really appreciated that. As a fellow content creator, I really like that.
I remember another thing that I found a bit hard to grasp when I was doing Kubernetes was like, what are all the files called? And I think I
Mm.
settled on just calling them all manifest files because there was files that were very specific to like deployment files or stuff. But overall, like the fact that you could have everything in a single YAML file or broken up into other YAML files was something that was different for me. So I thought that was kind of interesting. There was areas that you didn't have to know too well, which I wish I knew more about, like Prometheus. And so I do find that, and I think it's great to use multiple learning resources because I'm only good at the things that I'm good at. And someone else, like I know James, and I know in his course, he covers Prometheus really well. I don't know how to do Prometheus. Or in
Mhm.
mine, I think I did it. I can't remember because I might have failed it. And I can't remember if I rolled into the course, but it was like a service mesh. You don't need to deploy a service mesh, but I was very dead set on showing how service mesh work with Linkerd. Because even if I failed and I didn't finish the lab, at least we got to that point and you saw it. Because I believe if you see what you're doing, it's going to stay better in your head. Like, I didn't understand. I did all the slides, read everything about service meshes, did not understand it until I started doing it. Some things just only click when you do stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what I like most about the CKA and CKAD and CKS for that matter is that you're actually doing stuff in the terminal. So it's a little bit easier to learn in my opinion, just because you're not um because of what you just said, right? You're doing the commands, you're getting things done, you're accomplishing tasks, you're taking that action yourself. So it kind of helps with making that more concrete in your mind. So one of the other questions I had about you're kind of going back to what I was talking about with AWS. You know, we both come from the AWS world, and those uh, not only terminologies get mixed up there and are hard to kind of translate, but also um, when somebody says cloud native, I think a lot of people think about AWS and think about it's just a cloud provider, right? And so can you make the distinction for folks between like what a cloud is or a CSP and cloud native?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with the cloud service provider. So cloud service provider, CSP. An example of that would be AWS, Azure, GCP. These are cloud platforms that have very particular things that help you identify that that's what make they are. So some of those would be metered billing, being event driven, the amount of services they have, the interconnections between those services. That's a cloud service provider. There's a thing we call a cloud platform. So cloud platform is similar to cloud service provider, but they might only have a few collection of services, and they might not employ metered billing. So like an example would be using like HashiCorp products. They're a cloud platform. They're not necessarily CSP. But the reason that the term cloud native comes up with CSPs is because if you start down the AWS track, they keep saying cloud native to mean an app you build on AWS first, or any CSP, right? GCP, Azure. It's cloud native because you natively built it on the cloud. And the issue with that is that I would really call that term cloud first. But the thing is that when you go to the cloud native landscape, they define it wholly differently. And they actually defined it before AWS. So it kind of almost feels like it was co-opted by CSPs. Like it can mean multiple things, or there's multiple components to it. Literally pull up my slides to remember. It's actually my first slide, my whole thing. But there was multiple components like microservices, containers, continuous delivery, DevOps, backing services, things like that. But even with that definition, I wasn't happy with it. And I said, okay, well, let's go read what the definition by the CNCF is. And then they have like a huge paragraph on it. And, we read through that, and they mention similar things, but they talk about like the different models of cloud, service meshes, mutable infrastructure, the changes to which infrastructure is made. Some might say it's cloud native if you can take it on one provider, move it to another. And so I had to go and say, all right, that's okay. There's multiple ways of defining cloud native. Clearly, the cloud native space, like CNCF, that area, they were talking about it first. But then I had to say, well, if I'm going to boil it down, I would just say that cloud native means portable, modular, and isolate between different cloud deployment models. That was my definition. So I think that's just what happens. Like there are some terms that are they're like umbrella terms. They can fit so much stuff that we're going to have different definitions, and you have to pare it down. Another one that's really like that is like serverless. Ask people what serverless means, and you'll start a fight.
Yeah.
Ask what DevOps mean, and you used to start fights, not so much anymore. But yeah, cloud native is one of those terms that it gets redefined when you go down the KCNA.
Yeah, it's kind of hard for people to comprehend. Certainly was. I still have trouble explaining it, to be honest. So, yeah, if you're in that same boat, don't worry. You're not alone. And yeah, I just it helps to kind of translate that long description that the CNCF has, just because it's, um, it is different than just being the cloud, and so, um, what I kind of attribute it, or one of the main differences to me is just being cloud portable, right? Like you said, being able to to build applications, build infrastructure that is cross cloud, so you're um, not necessarily utilizing those specific AWS services, but um, at the same time taking advantage of some of those unique characteristics of cloud, right? So high availability, fault tolerance, scalability, things of that nature. So,
Like a hyperscale that moves. The thing is, like, there are things that would be considered cloud native projects and not. So when we look at the CNCF, they have a bunch of projects. And so when we're talking about service meshes, Istio is a service mesh, Linkerd is a service mesh, and those would be on the CNCF as cloud native because you can deploy them on generic, like into a cluster, and that cluster can be deployed on generic virtual machines.
hmm,
When you look at like HashiCorp, HashiCorp is allowing you to run cross cloud. So you can have console, which is a service mesh, and you can use that in more than one place. But
hmm,
it's not considered cloud native, even though you can run on multiple providers because console is, or maybe some people might define it as cloud native, or is it proprietary cloud native? We talk about serverless. Serverless, it seems like, can serverless even be cloud native? So
hmm,
and it can be, but like you look at AWS, and AWS has AWS Lambdas and it has all these cool features around it. But if you were to take that code, you couldn't move it to GCP. You couldn't move it to Azure. You could, but if you use any of the features around it, you're using native features to AWS, but it's not something that you can move around. So like, is it cloud native or is it AWS native, right? Or
yeah,
there's a new project coming out called Wing. Wing is a proprietary project. Well, actually, it's open source, I should say, and allows you to compile generic primitives like of serverless to different providers. So in that sense, it's kind of cloud native. So I don't know, it's fuzzy.
yeah, yeah. It's like one of those things, like serverless, that kind of, everyone has their own definition. But all right, with that, let's get into the winner of the prize. So let's, Andrew, did you bring your drum roll, perhaps? There we go. Yep.
I'm looking. No, I thought I had.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I usually have like a wheel. Seriously, I have like a wheel, but
Oh,
it's not here. Otherwise, I would have
oh,
rolled the
that's
wheel.
okay. We'll do a drum roll in our head. So let's do a drum roll, and the winner of the KCNA exam plus course voucher is, there's the email in the chat. So congratulations, mayadalis@gmail.com. And congratulations to them for winning the KCNA plus course voucher. So this is gonna get you a chance to schedule your exam, so an actual exam voucher from the Linux Foundation, and also a course, Andrew's course, to go along with preparing for that exam, for exam day. So super excited, and congratulations again. And I will email you, and yeah, if you're here, say hello. Not sure if this person's tuning in live here, but congratulations, and yeah, um, super exciting. I wish I had more sound effects to go along with this. Sorry, but but yeah, super exciting to have that chance to get that certification. It really, I think it really does mean a lot on your resume. A lot of people go back and forth, you know, trying to determine, are certifications worthy? Are these worth my time and effort? You talk about in your course, Andrew, about kind of the rigmarole that you have to go through to take your exam at home. You know, you have to clear your desk, clear your area. You can have any boxes or drinks on your desk. It's kind of a hassle, right?
Yeah, and it depends which test taker. I think there was only one for Linux Foundation. I can't remember. I always get Pearson and PSI mixed up, but one would let you put your computer on a box. Others would not let you prop it up. One would let you have a drink. One would not. One would let you have a piece of paper. One would not. So, or even just like scanning in. That's always the most frustrating part where I always forget that you have to turn your overhead lights off because you get a glare when you try to take a photo above. And then it's like you're trying to get in. You showed up 20 minutes early, and you spend 20 minutes trying to get your driver's license to get accepted by them.
Yeah.
It's a fun experience, but like in terms of is it useful to get the job? It's really going to be dependent on how it's perceived by the person that wants to hire you. I know, like when I see applicants and I see certifications, I know what they had to go through to get them and the
Mhm.
study material. So for me, I think they're valuable. I know folks getting jobs with the people say you can't get a job with certified cloud practitioner. I know folks getting jobs with certified cloud practitioner. They
Yeah.
might not be like cloud engineers. It might be like technical adjacent roles, but whatever gets you there. KCNA is definitely harder than the others. So if there was one to hold more weight at the fundamental level, it'd probably be the KCNA for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think when anybody does say that or ask me that question, you know, is it worth it to get these certifications? I always say yes, for a lot of different reasons. I think, um, you know, it's nice to have that certificate and that piece of paper on your wall or on your LinkedIn profile, but also I think in going through the preparation for that and studying and practicing, and especially for the KCNA, like you said, it's very hands on. You have to get in the terminal and figure out these commands, and you learn a lot along the way. Yeah, I think it certainly is worthy. If anything, for not actually going through that process, it's really helpful. Um, there was one thing I wanted to ask you. I did see a question in the chat as well. I and so Andrew, clear this up for us and the people asking in the chat here. What is the difference between your KCNA course that's on YouTube from the uh, free code camp and the one on your Exam Pro website?
Very, very common question asked. Happy to always answer it. So when we release on Free Code Camp, it is set in stone. I can't make corrections to it. It is what it is.
Mm.
So sometimes retroactively, we will update particular videos, add additional videos. And, 2 years out, by the time, if I do a refresh, like a hard refresh, there can be an accumulation of a lot of changes that can help you. So it varies every certification, but like KCNA, there's places we're patching all the time to make that a better experience. Now it's free on Free CodeCamp, but it's also free on my platform. But then I have a paid tier, and the paid tier is getting you access to um, additional practice exams, be able to download the slides and lectures. People want those all the time because they want to write notes. I engineer my slides with a lot of white space, optimized for black and white printing, because I know folks write on my slides.
Mm.
And they do that before they do their exam. They'll go through them, they'll write through them, they'll look at their notes and stuff like that. And there's paid support. So the idea is that if you have a question or you get stuck, you ask a question. We have time to reply, time to respond times to help you get through that stuff, because I can make a lab and it will work the first time, and then the second time it won't work, and then it will work the third time, because it's the nature of cloud. Not so bad with cloud native services, because if you're running that cluster locally, there's less variability. But the idea is that there's a lot that can go wrong, and even with perfect instruction, you might not get the same results. And so having that additional support is going to help you.
Yeah, I that was one thing I was going to ask you as well. Um, or compliment you on in your course, which was, just the combination of different ways to absorb your course. So I know that a lot of people prefer video to learn. A lot of people prefer audio to learn, and you make your courses mobile friendly too, which is good for learning on your commute to work, or on the train, or on the subway. And then you also provide a written, like you said, the note cards that you can print out, and you can write on the slides. You can write in between the text, or what have you. I really like that. Um, I feel like that's the future of online learning, right? It's not just posting a video up there and hoping that everyone gets the same out of it. I think there's a lot of different approaches there, right?
Well, and a lot of folks like to watch my course on their smart TVs, right? They're not even interacting with the site. It's just the mechanism to which they can watch it makes it easy through that, which I didn't know. Half our audience watches on mobile phones, or I mean, it's inconsistent for courses, but we try to write out good notes below the videos as well. That's separate from what's on the slides. We might expand them, or put additional information there. So there's always ways of layering the experience. I believed in layered learning as what you should pay for. And to me, like videos, I always want to do those free for folks, because I know that what people are paying for is not, I mean, yes, if the content is very rare, then people are paying for that gated content, but it's being able to learn in a way that you want to learn, or having mechanisms of learning that are going to help you. Watching the live stream last week, I think it was last week with Josh, was the concept of slip boxes, where you can log in like little pieces of
Yeah.
information. And I'm just like, why don't I code that into my platform, where you have a slip box and you can just start dropping in your notes as you go, and then you could then export them out or something. Or people use Anki, Anki for memorization, and I have flashcards. Why don't I have an export so that you can export them out, so you can import them Anki? Because at the end of the day, I don't care if, like, I'm making the content in different formats. I'm just trying to give you options to figure out what's going to fit for you. And so that's how I'm always trying to think about where the value is and what I should charge for.
Yeah, it's super smart. I really admire that, and to make it accessible for the most people is really the way to go. Even people in a chat are saying I use TV, and I wished I wish the videos on Exam Pro would auto continue. That's funny. Funny story. Back when I was at Linux Academy, that was a constant complaint. And what people don't realize is that you put it on autoplay, and it'll autoplay all the way until forever. So that creates a lot of problems on the back end, right?
Well, I mean, kind of, but the reason we don't have the autoplay, and it's the number one feature requested,
Yeah.
number one feature, and people are going to get it. It's just we got to just code it in. But it's the fact that when you finish a video, I want you to do comprehension.
Yeah.
So I want you to do like, we'll ask you like questions on the video, because the idea is if you just go to the next video, how do you know you watched anything or stuff like that? So I want folks to do the comprehension checks, but those don't pop up automatically. They're right below the button. So it's a kind of a UI UX thing, but I hear it the most. Can you just let me autoplay? But I
Yeah,
think what we'll
that's like,
do is we'll have it somewhere like as a toggle, but you'll have to turn it on, because we want you to have best practices. At the same time, I don't want people to get through it and not pass. But some people, that what they want to do is they just want to watch it all back to back on their smart TVs or something, right? So
yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking of it from the back end, but yeah, for actual comprehension, and for the learner's benefit, I think it does help them to have like a moment of pause before the next video, right? And as you switch context or switch subjects, um, it does. I think it does hurt you in some ways with your comprehension. And also, I did notice in your course you can like collect stars, or that's how I viewed it anyways.
yep.
So you have a star for completing the video, you give
Mhm.
a star for, completing the flashcards, I think, right? And then a star for doing the quiz.
Yeah, I used to when we only did AOS, I used to actually have an instructor bot, and we could tell you it looked like me. Well, it was instructor Andrew bot. Like it was clear that it was a bot, but like it would say like, "Hey, we noticed that you did it out of order. Do you know this is going to affect your score? Hey, you're skipping comprehension. Do you know it'll affect your score? Hey, you did this amount of distance between the end of your thing and a practice exam, or hey, you did a practice exam, you only did half of it for some reason." And those things, like the reason most people, if they do fail, if they're in that failing bracket, is because of strange study habits.
Hmm.
And there are lots of different ways to learn, but there are also lots of ways of bad learning, lots of ways of good learning. But the issue was once we started doing other cloud providers, the bot didn't work because apparently
Yeah.
different clouds require different approaches. But yeah, there was that kind of thing, and that's why the star system was part of it, was to do that. But now we need something more complex, and I haven't figured out something. So somebody has the solution. You just tell me.
Yeah, help Andrew out. Yeah, so I like that, and like you said, it kind of goes along with what we were talking about last week with how humans learn, right? And how we actually hold on to these things. And by the end of the course, you may have finished all the videos, but do you remember that concept that may appear on the exam that was in lecture 14 out of 35 or something, and you may have forgotten it. So it's very important to kind of, and each person is different, right? So that's why we don't kind of, or I should speak for myself. I never, kind of say this is the way to study. I always try to give these options, right? And what you're doing, and try to uh, kind of coach people along to develop their own patterns. And a lot of it is, you know, it's you need to develop these systems yourself because that's what's going to work best for you. And but also, um, it's really the work that you have to put in to memorize and to there's a they say when you're writing, there's a connection between your brain and your finger that happens that you can't get anywhere else, and helps you retain information. And as you go through these practices and kind of um, try to learn things, it really helps, I think.
Yeah, and there's variants of what you learn. Like some folks want lecture before lab. Some people want to do all the labs and then lectures, or there's things like that. So, um, or they need to see, maybe they want to do a half a practice exam at the start to know where their assessment is, and then at the end, that way they're prepared. So I think that there is definitely variance of learning. The question is, how do we help shape the learning to the student that gets the best result, is always the hardest challenge. But, I'm hoping that that's something we can figure out and get better at. But I don't think other providers do that. Like they just have, here's your course, go through the list, and you're done. But I don't know. It's interesting. So
I think it is. I think it's really interesting. I think it's the research that goes into um, there's actually a term for kind of adult learning. It slips my mind right now, but it's
adulting.
no.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, yeah, yeah, kind of,
That
but
too. I don't know.
um, you know how they, I don't know. It slipped my mind. Anyways, there's a term for the research that goes into teaching adults and the retention of memory and learning for adults. And it's not androgyny. It's let me. This is gonna bother me. Learning for adults. Term for andragogy. It's tough to say, right? So, all right. So I have to post this in the chat just to
I
satisfy
just want
my
to see
own
that word blown up.
curiosity.
I want to see how it's spelled.
Andragogy. Yeah, we talked about that a lot at Linux Academy and A Cloud Guru. So it's the study of learning in adults. We don't talk about ACG. Nice, Boris. Um, yeah, so let's switch gears a little bit, and we did have a question come in about the KCNA and the when does it expire? So when does the KCNA expire uh, if you take it today, for instance?
2 years, 3 years? Like usually that's the standard for exams. Let's go look at my notes.
Yeah,
My notes
tune
will
into his
know.
course to find out. I like that.
Well, it's just I don't know. I can't. I have to. I never remember any of these things. Let's go find out. No, I'll find out in 2 seconds if I can find my spot.
It's 3 years.
3 years.
Just doing a quick Google search, but I think they did change it from 2 years to 3 years recently, so it does get a bit confusing.
Mine says 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. 36 months.
36 months. Cool. So that's the answer to that question. Um, yeah, 3 years. That's a good amount of time to have that certification. So it makes it even more worthy, I think. Even though the exam is quite pricey, right? It's like $250 US.
Yeah, it's really expensive. I mean, I think like you can get discounts quite often for it if you know like an ambassador and they want to slip you the coupon or something like that. But I don't know if you're like I don't know if Linux Foundation has a mailing list or something, and then maybe they send out that stuff. But I would just say like if you don't see a discount, just wait a little bit and or make some friends in the community and just keep asking like, hey, have you seen any discounts? Because it is really expensive, but you do get 2 takes. So
Yeah, that's good too. Yeah, they do have frequent sales, I guess you could say. And yeah, you can sign up for being alerted when those sales occur. We just had a big one for Black Friday. So you go to training.linuxfoundation.com and you scroll all the way to the bottom. You can sign up for their newsletter to hear about those sales that go on for the KCNA and other. Usually they'll do them all at the same time, right? So, we have a question in the chat here. Yeah, there's a lot of chatting going on. So let's
a
see.
lot of people saying, Andrew, please code an autoplay.
Yeah,
A very long time, very loyal exam pro fans are like, Andrew, where's my autoplay?
yeah, right.
Any
How about
upcoming
you can
courses?
open source it, right? So let's do that.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, players are really, really hard to work with. So we
Oh, yeah.
use like an open source one called Player with E,
Huh.
and like they're not maintaining more, and there's like a new one that's being built, but it's incomplete. And so we're like, should we build our own player? So it gets more complicated than you think. But are there any new upcoming courses? Right now, I'm working on the refreshes of the AWS certifications. People ask me every day for those, but those will be next. So some associates or all the associates and probably the pros at the same time. We have a PL 900 course coming up for Microsoft because that is very popular. We have content prepped for more Microsoft security certs because people keep asking me for all of them. They're all pretty similar to me. Like if you did the SC900, which covers a bit of all of them, it's very easy to do all the other ones. But those ones are later out there. Right now, I'm focused on trying to provide more project-based content because we're running up in a refresh cycle. I really want to produce more project-based modular lab stuff because I have a lot of lecture content and I want to get you really good hands-on stuff. So in January, I'm probably dating the video by saying times, but in January, I'm going to be running my first free cloud project bootcamp. And in that content is some of the content that you will see more of from me, which is a lot of project-based stuff, which people really, really want because they're saying like, hey, I took certifications. Now I need to build something. And so I'm trying to saturate more free content in that area.
Yeah, that's awesome. I personally like the project based work. I've done it before, and I really, I really enjoy how you get something at the end of it, right? It's like a little prize. You build something, you can put it in your profile, you can have it in your portfolio. You know, when you go for your interview, it's really valuable in my opinion. All right, so I think I heard something about you doing um, something with. I should have asked you this before, but about the was it MongoDB or?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I did a hackathon like a few weeks ago, but what I did was I built out a Twitter clone. It's actually a repo somewhere there. And so we built out a Twitter clone, and it was backed by MongoDB Atlas along with deployed to GCP Cloud Run. And so that was actually a prototype that I was building out for the upcoming Cloud Project Bootcamp, but I'm doing it all AWS. And so that's where we have kind of a framework to start doing modular kind of stuff.
Cool.
And it's kind of like a secret repo because people don't know about it, but it's open source and it's just sitting in my main GitHub if people want to pick apart a project. So yeah, I'm always playing around with stuff and making open source free repos, but I don't always tell people about it because I just don't, because it takes time to package content and make them attractive. Um, Definitely something I want to do in 2023, like I really, really want to do, is to solve data modeling for NoSQL. So you hear of like DynamoDB, MongoDB, Cassandra, all these NoSQL databases. If you try to model data model in them, they're like a headache.
Hmm.
And so I have a couple really, really smart folk, and I'm going to hold them down and have them tell me in the simplest terms how to do data modeling, and then we'll show everybody. Because I don't think it's as hard as it is. It's just that we don't have that person translating it from complicated talk to talk that I can understand and everyone else can understand. So that's something I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really like that. It's a complex thing, databases, right? Especially as we relate them to cloud native. And you know, I always hear the question, you know, what's really the benefit of putting my database on Kubernetes? You know, because it's so complex. There's a lot of abstraction there. Um, you know, the short answer is stateful set, but also there's a lot of complexity that goes along with running a stateful set in Kubernetes. Um, I think, as far as I've seen in my experience in the field, you know, CockroachDB has done a really good job with trying to solve those problems. But I always get that question, and I wonder kind of what's the future of databases, both you know, traditional relational databases and no you know, NoSQL databases. I always wonder about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's hard to say where data should live because before, AWS and all these ones had managed solutions, everyone was like, you can't put your data in a proprietary database. That's a disaster. And like CockroachDB, I can't remember if it was CockroachDB or something else. Maybe it was like CouchDB or so. I can't remember what it was, but I knew it wasn't CouchDB, but it was like the first fully managed data. This was like 2009 or something, 2010. And the idea just seemed crazy. But now you have DynamoDB, which is proprietary. You have proprietary databases that are like compatible, like MongoDB compatible, but they're actually still proprietary, like DocumentDB. Or you have like Spanner on GCP, which seems really powerful, but you have proprietary ones on the SQL side and the NoSQL side, and it's hard because if you put that there, you can't move. So what I'm kind of leaning towards now is looking at. I'm going to butcher their name because I do not know. I've been told how to pronounce it. I just can't remember how to say it. But I'm going to say Avian, but it's AIVEN. And so they're like a new type of cloud platform where they allow you to provision on AWS, Azure, GCP. So you just choose where you want to deploy it. But it's like vanilla. It's like vanilla open source.
Hmm.
So it's not like proprietary Postgres, proprietary. It's all open source vanilla deployed to the provider that you want, but they're managing it. And I feel like that gives you a bit more ability to pivot. So like if you're running Cassandra on there or maybe MongoDB, it's less of an issue than running MongoDB Atlas, because like MongoDB Atlas, it's great, it's powerful, but like if you start using their search feature, you can't move somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
If you need to. So it's always the worry: do we need to move? Do we not need to move? But usually if you can't move, you're already in a good place. You know what I mean? It's usually a good problem. Like you have so much money and stuff like that at that point, maybe it's not a problem to move. But for a lot of folks, they do have the ability to move to other data sources. But yeah, I don't know what the future holds, but there is a lot of stuff out there. And I'm a little bit scared by proprietary databases. So like in our learning platform Exam Pro, which is actually called Teacher Seat, we have to build a thing called a learning record store. And it captures all like learning data, like if you click a thing or finish a module. And if I was to put that in DynamoDB, well, that's great. But now how do I deploy my Teacher Seat platform to Azure if, let's say, the School Board of Canada goes, hey, can we use this? But we use Azure, right? And I'm just like, well, it's tied to DynamoDB. You have to use DynamoDB just for this part. They'd be like, no, it has to be in a solution on Azure or Azure. So, and Chad, what's your preferred pronunciation?
My preferred is Azure.
Okay. So I found out that both are correct.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
both are correct. But and there's some other odd ones that I've heard. I made like a meme recently about it, and people were like, "Oh, but you can say it this way and that way." I'm like, "Oh."
Oh, people are coming up with new ways. Cool. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, I support all ways of saying all the words, and I always get that with kubectl, right? I say kubectl, but some people say kubectl. I've even heard kubectl. So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, as long as we know what people are generally saying, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're about at time here, but I got to ask you this question. It's the number one question everyone wants to know, Andrew. What's your plan for getting shredded before reInvent 2023? What's your training regimen?
So John Seville? Watch his videos. Do you know John Seville? Like he makes Azure.
Oh, is that the really ripped Azure guy with the whiteboard in the background?
I wish I could get him as a trainer. Like, John, how do I do it? But he won't tell me. I mean, like for me, I have a clinical dietitian here in Canada, so I keep my macros, my calories in check, my protein in check. I know a fella over in the Overtown there, and he has like a transformation story. So I go over there. He owns the cannabis shop, and so I go there, and I don't need cannabis, but I'll go there and I'll be like, because he won't do coaching anymore. So I'll be like, hey, I'll buy some cannabis. I just keep buying more cannabis that we don't use. So I can go talk to him and be like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Like fight bears. We got bears up here. So a good tumble with a bear is going to put on some muscles. But I don't know. It's just consistency, right? It's no different than cloud. It is challenging, but the idea is that if you hit a hurdle and you can't figure stuff out, you have to find a workaround. And even if you feel like you're not on the right track or you're not sure, the idea is to keep showing up every day and try to be consistent and try to put those excuses aside, and eventually it will work, and not worrying about how long it will take. So like some people want to get there in 3 months and they get devastated when the result isn't what they wanted it to be. But I think that you just have to be more interested and just keep pushing forward until you see the result that you want. So will I be ripped for reInvent for 2023? I don't know, but I'm hoping if I just keep consistent and make no excuses, then maybe we'll see.
Yeah, that's an excellent plan. And I also know that accountability works. So I implore everyone that's listening to this broadcast, go to Andrew's Twitter profile and hold him to this goal that he set. It's accountability is so important for meeting those goals. reInvent 2023. We're going to hold you to it, Andrew, and accountability matters, right? It's all about having trying to make the segue into learning here.
Well,
Not only
I
holding.
was gonna say, Chad, is there any way that people could stay accountable while doing Kubernetes?
Oh yes, thank you, Andrew, for mentioning. We have this thing called Kubeskills,
Hmm.
and Kubeskills is a community where you can go to learn about Kubernetes, and not only just learn Kubernetes. We talked about absorbing videos and absorbing all this content from anywhere and everywhere. A lot of that can be overwhelming sometimes you need a friend to kind of to lift you up, to hold you accountable, and to be there by your side as you're learning together. Cubeskills.com is the website to go to for that. And as we say in Cube Skills, learning's always better with friends. Everything's always better with friends. And so we have a lot of friends in the Cube Skills community. So I encourage you to join and be a member. It's totally free. We have a lot of cool people in there.
And if I'm new to tech, can I join, or is it only for people that know like the most about Kubernetes?
No, absolutely. We actually, most of our community is new people, and so new to Kubernetes, new to approaching your KCNA exam, new to this concept of containers and distributed systems and container orchestration and things that we've been talking about, serverless to service mesh to all the different terminology and things to get introduced to that, right? Because a lot of that is very very important.
If I wanted to
Um,
stay motivated and I wanted to wear that motivation, is there any place I could buy motivation to wear? Like wearables?
oh man, I got to tell you, it's very interesting that you mentioned that
I'm like
because
wearing my AWS windbreaker right now. Awesome.
it's very interesting that you mentioned that. You know why? It's because we have
Is that
just
too much?
just launched. Uh, now, let me pull this up. So it's the grand reveal. Cubeskills.shop. And if you go
Really?
to cubeskills.shop,
I'm going there right now.
yeah, everybody go there. Try to crash the server.
It's already reasonably priced, and there's an early bird special of 10% off.
Absolutely. 10% off your order. Use code earlybird at checkout and get all of your Cube Skills swag. There's even journals in there so you can write your notes as you go through Andrew's KCNA course. It's just a beautiful thing where people can turn in and turn up and turn out and turn whatever direction you want to, and
But
get a hold of that.
but people that buy the merch and wear it stay 50% more motivated and have a higher chance of passing.
They do, and they look good while doing it. Yeah, well, in all seriousness, folks, I mean, it's a really good community. We have 200 plus people in the community, and we're really passionate about helping others learn and grow. So, I mean, and we have cool memes in there. We have giveaways just like this one every once in a while, and we have cool snacks. There's cake. I heard there was cake. Somebody's you know, so you never know what you're going to get. So, go to cubeskills.com and try it out. Thanks again, Andrew, for joining. I appreciate you, first of all, making the course. Appreciate you joining here, obviously, and helping everyone, start on this journey to learning Kubernetes and getting KCNA certified.
Yeah, well, thanks you for having me. Thank you everyone that came out and made chatter in the chat there. And yeah, I'm hoping that I'll do more Kubernetes stuff. But if I'm not, you know where to go and who's passionate about it to help you at the next step. Cube skills.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Skills, exampro.co. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining, everyone. Appreciate your time, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.